He knows where we, as a country, can go. He knows what we can become if we have the guts to stand up to greed and corruption. This is a campaign to transform our economy, the greatest in the history of the world, into an economy that works not just for the super wealthy 1%, but for all people. This is simple. While corporate profits are rising and income for shareholders has been rising, wages for workers have not. The wealthiest corporations and the wealthiest people are paying a lower tax rate than working class Americans. We're going to make them pay their fair share. We will no longer accept billionaires buying our elections. No more executives from the drug and fossil fuel companies or profiteers from private health insurance or private prisons buying off candidates. It is time for a political and economic system that works for the many and not the few. We have a once-in-a-lifetime candidate here. He is daring to embrace an honest, authentic political vision, a vision that will fundamentally rebuild outdated systems, rebuild infrastructure, and rebuild an American working class that has been in need of support for so many decades. Senator Bernie Sanders is building a movement. Some call it a political revolution. Working for this campaign, I see this movement every day. A movement like this is really, really rare. This is a grassroots campaign that has raised more money from more individual donors and faster than ever before in the history of presidential campaigns. People all over the country are supporting us. People believe in this movement. Hardworking people, teachers, nurses, young people are supporting us. We are out here talking to our friends, talking to our neighbors, talking to our communities, and really listening to the issues that mean so much to people here in New Hampshire and all across America. I'm here to ask you to join this movement. There are thousands of voters we need to reach in order to win here in New Hampshire. We need you to join us and help us get this done. Help us knock doors, call phones, have these conversations with your neighbors. Help us by offering housing to a staffer or a volunteer. Help us to do this work and reach out to others because we have so much more in common than anything that divides us. Thank you. So when the pundits write us off, when the media ignores us, when another billionaire jumps into the race, what do? We get out there, we keep fighting, we keep organizing every weekend, every day, and we build this movement. Let's bring all people together, no matter what you look like, no matter what you look like, no matter where you come from. Like Senator Bernie Sanders says, this is not about me, this is about us. Thank you. So now I'd like to introduce our next speaker. You may recognize him from the movies. Some of my favorite movies, like Galaxy Quest and Dodgeball, a true underdog story. He's the voice of Alvin and the Chipmunks. But most importantly, he's an activist, and he's a great supporter of this campaign. He helped us launch a canvas this morning in Peterborough, New Hampshire. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody, Mr. Justin Long.
Thank you. There you go. Thank you so much, and thank you for saying the important things, because I don't have many important things to say. It is so inspiring to see, first of all, slightly upsetting that you have a much thicker beard than I'm capable of growing half my age. It's not fair. Thanks for mentioning Alvin and the Chipmunks. So for all the kids whose parents dragged you here today, at least you can say, well, I saw the guy who is Alvin. If you were bummed about being here. I thought there'd be a few people here today on this beautiful, crisp fall, sunny day. The weather was so crappy. You're welcome, parents. That it was so curse-wordy that I thought for sure there'd be a smattering, but it is so inspiring to see all of you guys here today, and I know you're here for the same reason probably that I am, is that we love the movement that this man has fostered and continues to cultivate, the idea of bringing and giving the power back from the corporations and the greed that has infected American politics back to the people. And so we are passionate about it to the point where we would give up Sunday, football Sunday. Of course, your team's playing later, so it's fine. The Jets are at 1 o'clock. I'm giving up a little bit more than you are, maybe. That's okay. I grew up, before I was Alvin, thank you, from Alvin and the Chipmunks, I grew up in a town very much like this. I grew up in a small town in Connecticut, and whenever I say to people I'm from Connecticut, they say, ooh, fancy. And it wasn't the case. I grew up in a very middle-class home. My dad was a teacher, and my mom was an actress, but like most actresses, she was unemployed throughout most of my childhood. And we relied very heavily on unions. Unions were a huge part of my experience growing up. Were it not for a union, my childhood would have looked differently. And if it weren't for the unions, Christmas would have been different. So I know the power that the unions have and the need for strong unions. And there's no candidate that supports unions the way that Bernie Sanders does. Yeah. And I know the knock. I know the knock I get lately. The mainstream media has been. My parents do nothing but watch MSNBC all day, and so their takeaway after weeks of just being inundated by MSNBC is, Bernie and the heart attack, and it's too bad he's not. He's too old. He's not healthy. No, these are the narratives that are being pushed. I can personally attest to something. In 2016, when I was first doing surrogate stuff for Bernie, we would have these long days, and as a surrogate, I'm not politically, I have no political clout, obviously, except for people who love Alvin and the Chipmunks. So what I do is basically just encourage people to vote, especially young people, and spread the word about Bernie's platform, and go out to whatever town I can and talk to people. And so there's a lot of needing to be present and connected to people, and it can frankly be really exhausting. It gets tiring. You don't want to shortchange anybody. You want to be very present. And I've seen how Bernie does it. He does it exponentially better than I could do it. And at the end of these days, 7, 8 o'clock would roll around, and I'm in my 30s. I just wanted to pass out. I wanted to go to sleep. And a lot of the aides that we were working with on Senator Sanders' campaign, they would say, yeah, we did, and younger than me, they would say, yeah, us too. We wanted to just go to sleep. But Bernie wanted to play basketball. Bernie's like, let's go, let's shoot a little bit. And I came in last night. I had driven 3.5 hours, and I got to this dinner. We were meeting people. And Stephanie, who was taking me around, said, oh, there's a dance. They're going to be dancing. And inside I thought, oh, God, it's the are you kidding? I'm supposed to cut a rug now? I've been driving for 3 hours. I'm exhausted. 41 years old. And cut to about 30 minutes later, they're playing ABBA, Dancing Queen. And the ultimate Dancing Queen is in the center of the dance floor, literally dancing circles around people. Senator Sanders was just like going bananas on the dance floor. He was, it was amazing, and I felt so inadequate. And what does this say about my own energy level? I have to go to I should get checked out. But so I wish people could see that. I wish they could show that on MSNBC. Bernie like dancing like a maniac after a whole day of campaigning and being present and putting in the work. So the fact that we are here today, I think undercuts the fact that Bernie has been there every day, for years, for decades, fighting on behalf of us, on behalf of the people. And I am proud, and I'm very grateful to be a very tiny part of this movement, as we all are. So it's an honor to be here with you. I thank you for being here and for anything you can do to help Bernie Sanders become the next president of the United States. Let's do it. I want to introduce Tracy Houghton. She is an IT professional, or as I almost said, an IT professional. And more importantly, she is a Bernie supporter. This is Tracy Houghton. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tracy Houghton, and I am a long-term Bernie Sanders supporter. I'm a long-term Bernie Sanders supporter, very. My husband, Ron, is the commander here at the American Legion, Post 59, and he shares a lot. Thank you. He shares with Senator Sanders a strong desire to serve and to improve the community. And I know firsthand how much hard work and commitment that can take even to make the smallest changes. So I heard Bernie speak back in Keene in 2016, and I could only hear him because at the Colonial Theater, it was so packed that I had to go to the overflow room. But it was amazing and so inspiring to hear him speak, and he's so passionate. And I could just feel the energy grow in the room. And I'm really excited for that to happen again in a few minutes, as I know it will, right? Yeah. I believe Senator Sanders, his lifetime of service and to his community, to our country, his work for the people rather than special interest represent the very best parts of our democracy. And he really is the best choice to lead our country into the future. And I really cannot wait to elect Bernie Sanders President of the United States. Thank you. With that, I'm going to welcome Rich Gullah to speak.
Are we feeling the burn? Are we feeling the burn? Are we feeling the burn? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard Gullah. I am a 42-year resident of the town of Hillsboro, and I also am a president of a local labor union. I want to be clear, I'm here today as a private citizen and a very proud former 2016 delegate to the National Democratic Convention of Senator Sanders. We have an opportunity, thank you. We have an opportunity today to elect a leader that will make free college a reality, that will make health care for all a reality, that will make a green environment for all a reality. But most of all, we can look forward to electing a president that will bring dignity and respect back to the Oval Office. As a labor leader, I know firsthand that Senator Sanders stands with the middle class and working people. I had a recent opportunity where our local was organizing workers over in Rockingham County. And he took time out of his busy schedule, not to campaign, but to come and give them words of encouragement. And they did ultimately vote to unionize. And he wants to make it easier for folks to unionize, and I think that's a great thing personally. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce the next President of the United States, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out on this beautiful New England fall day. First thing I'm going to do is take off my jacket. Second thing I'm going to do is thank all of the speakers who have gone before me. Let me thank Miles Brodigan. Let me thank Justin Long. Justin is one of the great actors in this country, and we very much appreciate his being here today. And let me thank Ron Houghton from the local American Legion right here. And I want to thank Ron, and I want to thank all the veterans who are here. As it happens, I am the former chair of the U.S. Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. And I have had the opportunity to meet with so many veterans all over this country, have a sense of the issues that are impacting them and their families, talk to people who came home from war, sometimes wounded in body and sometimes wounded in spirit. And I think all of us agree that no matter what our views are on a war, we do not hold the men and women who put their lives on the line accountable. We hold the politicians who created that war accountable. So to Ron and all of the veterans of this country, my pledge is we will strengthen the VA. We will create a system in which every veteran in this country gets all of the health care that they are entitled to and gets all of the benefits that they earned in a timely manner. So Ron, thank you for allowing us to use the facility. And let me thank Ron's wife, Tracy, for her support. Appreciate her being here and speaking as well. And let me thank an old friend of mine, Rich Gula, who's head of the State Employees Union. This campaign, frankly, is a campaign based on the needs of the working class of this country. And I think, as all of you know, that what we have seen in the last 40 or 50 years is ordinary people in New Hampshire and in Vermont, in many cases, working longer hours for low wages. And almost all of the new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. So I want to thank Rich, and I want to thank other members of the trade union movement for standing up for workers. We have introduced in this campaign the strongest pro-union legislation ever introduced in modern history, which will make it easier for workers to join unions and get decent wages and decent benefits. So, Rich, thank you for all that you are doing. Let me begin by, can everybody hear me back there? Because often I think the mic is too low and then I stress out my voice, but if you can hear me, that's okay. I want to begin with a quote from one of my heroes, and I know a hero of many of yours, Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela, as you all know, spent much of his adult life in jail at hard labor, fighting apartheid in South Africa. And he came out of jail and then became president of South Africa. And what he said is that it always, and I quote, "it always seems impossible until it is done," end of quote. It always seems impossible until it is done. What does that mean? What does that mean? No? What is that profound one sentence tell us? All right, I got a hand here. Raise your hand, please. Stand up. That's right. Until, if you have the willingness to envision it. Yes. Stand up, please. It means don't give up. That's right. Okay. Other thoughts on that? Nothing is impossible. It always seems impossible until it is done. Anyone else? I got a hand back there. Yeah. That is good. All right, you guys were great. And this is a very profound point. Let me give you an example. 100 years ago or so, women in America did not have the right to vote. And 120 years ago, of course women don't have the right to vote. They're supposed to stay home. And people are laughing now. But that is exactly the point. 120 years ago, they weren't laughing. That was the reality of the moment. Women are not smart enough to be thinking about politics. Women are supposed to stay home and have babies. That's what they are ordained to do. That's what they're supposed to do. That was the prevailing wisdom. And now if you would say that, the people literally laugh. Right? Because that change did not happen by accident. In terms of the women's movement, women stood up, occasionally died, went on hunger strikes, struggled with their male allies to say sorry. We reject that definition of who a woman is. We reject it. You're wrong. Women are not supposed to stay home and cook and have babies. They should be able to go out and get any job they want. They should be able to vote. They should be able to do anything they want to do that men do. And it's the same thing. But the struggle was to change that consciousness. That was the struggle. Same thing with the civil rights movement. Civil rights movement didn't happen because there was a great leader named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It happened because of him. It happened because millions of people, black and white, said, you know what? We reject the idea that one race is inferior to another race. We reject the idea that black children cannot go to a school with white kids or drink in a water fountain. We reject that. Consciousness changed, the world changed. And that is true of every profound change in this country. 150 years ago, you had workers in New Hampshire, Vermont, all over this country, working under horrendous conditions, working 7 days a week, kids working in factories, children working in the fields of America. And people said, working class people said, that is not acceptable. We are human beings. We're not beasts of burden. We will be treated with dignity. We will form unions, and whether you like it or not, you're going to have to deal with us. We as workers have rights. And workers formed unions. Some of them were killed in the struggle. Some of them went to jail. Some of them were beaten. But that was the struggle. And that's where we are today. Today, the fight is not just against a greedy and corrupt corporate elite. I'm not just talking about Wall Street and the drug companies and the insurance companies and the fossil fuel companies, etc. What we're talking about is the need to change consciousness, the need to know what we are entitled to as human beings. That is the struggle. And once we achieve that, the other stuff will fall into place. We'll be able to take on Wall Street and all the rest. And what we need is people in this country to say, wait a second. We are living in the richest country in the history of the world. We're not a poor country. If we were a poor country, we'd have a different discussion. We are the richest country in the history of the world, except most working people don't know that because they're too busy struggling to keep their heads above water economically. We're the richest country in the history of the world. You got 3 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of America. We are the richest country in the history of the world, and in New Hampshire and in Vermont, you got many folks working 2, 3 jobs, 50, 60 hours a week, and yet 49% of all new income goes to the top 1%. And our consciousness has got to say that tonight there are over 500,000 people in this country who are homeless, sleeping out on the streets or in shelters, including 30,000 veterans, by the way. And what our consciousness has got to say is, we don't accept that. We don't accept that. And we are going to create a government and an economy that work for all of us, not just the 1%. And that is what this struggle is about. And what does that mean? It means that from a democracy point of view, we in New England, we pride ourselves on having led the country in democracy in many ways. And we have town meetings, probably with people, like this coming out to a town meeting, and people argue about how much we should spend on education, how much we spend on the roads, and so forth. And at the end of the debate, people raise their hand. One person, one vote. That is what we believe democracy is about. It's not a radical idea. That's New England democracy. That is what this country is supposed to be about. We do not believe that billionaires have the right to buy elections. And that is why we are going to overturn Citizens United. That is why multi-billionaires like Mr. Bloomberg are not going to get very far in this election. That is why we're going to end voter suppression in America. Because we believe, and I believe this from the bottom of my heart. Look, I would run for office many, many times in Vermont. Most of the times I've won, but I've lost. But it never, ever occurred to me as a candidate or as a senator to figure out how I could suppress the vote of my opponents. If I can't win an election based on my ideas, I shouldn't win that election. So what is the agenda that we are fighting for? That my opponents and that the media and the corporate elite thinks is so very radical, so extreme. You want to hear what this agenda is? Here's what the agenda is about. It says that in New Hampshire, in Vermont, in America, if you work 40 hours a week, you shouldn't live in poverty. How's that for a radical agenda? Oh, my goodness. And that is why we have to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. And when we talk about wages, you want to hear another really radical idea? All right, you ready for it? I don't want people collapsing on me here, We think women should be paid equal pay for equal work. Oh, my God. Imagine that. Oh, my word. How bold can you possibly be? And when we talk about a progressive agenda, we say that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, when you have major corporations like Amazon that made $11 billion in profits last year, not paying a nickel in federal income taxes, you know what? Those guys under our administration will start paying their fair share of taxes. And here is another radical idea. I don't want to throw too much of it at you. I don't want you. It's warm in here. I don't want people fainting along the way. When I was a kid, public colleges and universities, many of them, were virtually tuition-free. Some older people remember that? You went to school?
Free.
What school did you go to?
I went to a nursing school in Fall River, Massachusetts.
And it was virtually free?
And they paid me.
Okay. So you had great schools, you had major public universities like the University of California, City University in New York City, and other state colleges all over this country, virtually tuition free. So here is my radical idea that maybe we do today what this country did 50 years ago, make public colleges and universities tuition free. And here's another radical idea. Congress, against my votes, bailed out the crooks on Wall Street 11 years ago. That's a whole other story I don't want to get into. But they were, after nearly destroying the economy, their penalty was that they got bailed out. It's a hell of a penalty, right? Okay. 2 years ago, Trump and his friends gave $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1% and large profitable corporations. If we can do that for the people on top, we can cancel all student debt in America, all of it. Trump and his friends, despite what Trump said during his last campaign, you remember he said in Hampshire, he said, I'm a different type of Republican. Believe me. Oh, my goodness. Well, we have learned not to believe much of what he says. And he said, I will not cut Medicare, remember that? Medicaid or Social Security. I will shock all of you when I tell you that he lied. I know that's hard for you to fathom, that the president doesn't always tell the truth, but that was the case. But you do have, to their credit, people like Mitch McConnell, Republican leader of the Senate. Mitch were here today. He'd say, well, he would say to his credit, yeah, we got to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Well, I respectfully disagree with Mitch McConnell. I think we should expand Medicare and to cover all. I want to get that. We should expand Social Security so that the older people in this country trying to get by on $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a year get a little bit more income, and that we should extend the life of Social Security for another 50 years by lifting the cap on taxable income. But you got a lot of older people, you know, states like New Hampshire and Vermont are older states. And don't kid yourself. You got a lot of older people who are living in isolation, who don't have enough money to keep their homes warm in the wintertime to buy the food they need. And we've got to do better by senior citizens in this country. Four years ago, I came to New Hampshire. And I want to thank many of you for the support you gave me 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we came here and we said again something that was seemingly so radical. What we said is that maybe the United States should do what every other major country on earth is doing, guarantee health care to all of our people as a human right. Well, 4 years have come and gone, and that idea, which seemed so radical then, is not perceived to be so radical today, because the American people are catching on to the dysfunctionality and the cruelty of the current system. It is, and the more you study it, the more cruel it is. I just want to make a few points on this. We are spending as a nation twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other country. So our problem is not that we're not spending enough money. Sometimes lack of spending is a problem. That's not the case in health care. We spend about $11,000 a year per man, woman, and child. Canadians spend about half of that. Most of the countries in Europe spend about half of that. And yet spending twice as much per person on health care, we end up with 87 million people who are either uninsured or underinsured. And let me underline underinsured. You know what underinsured means? What does underinsured mean? You all know what it means. What does it mean? Give me an example of underinsured. Yup. All right. Tell me what it means. Okay. You're not underinsured? So what does that mean? So don't get sick out of New Hampshire, right? Okay. Be careful about that. All right, what else does it mean, underinsured? Yes, I see the gentleman over here. Yes, sir.
Someone I know is unable to get, is on Medicaid, but is unable to find dental
Good.
because they won't pay.
Dental care is a huge crisis in this country. Many Americans are unable to find affordable dental care. Very good point. What else does it mean, underinsured? Yes, ma'am. Stand up. Bankruptcy. And I want to talk about that for a second. I want you to deal with the cruelty of this system. Somebody gets sick, you go to the doctor. Doctor says, Mary, I am sorry to have to tell you, you're dealing with cancer. So Mary's head is reeling. What does she do? What doctor does she go to? What kind of treatment does she receive? What kind of medicine does she need? I mean, there's a lot that you're thinking about when you're fighting for your life. Uniquely in this country, what Mary has to worry about is that if she runs up a $100,000 bill because she's a working class woman, that she may go bankrupt because she cannot afford to pay that. Stop and think. 500,000 people in this country last year went bankrupt from medically related debt. How cruel is that? All right? You know, it's one thing you want to go to a casino and blow your money and you'll lose it, fine. But here you are diagnosed with an illness. To go bankrupt because you're struggling with a serious illness is cruel and frankly un-American. All right? So that is another example. What other examples? Ma'am, what does underinsured mean?
Rising deductibles.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right, again, we don't talk about it much in Congress. 30,000 people a year die because they don't get to a doctor on time. Next time you're in a doctor's office, ask your doctor if he or she has treated people who walked in the office too late. And they will tell you they have. Okay? 30,000 people die because they either don't have any insurance, or as you indicated, they have deductibles, or they got co-payments, and they don't have the money in their own pockets. So they hesitate going to the doctor, and by the time they go in, their problem is incurable. That happens. Yes, ma'am. Stand up if you could, please. It's a mic coming right there.
Well, I have Medicare, but when I have to fill a prescription, sometimes I can't afford it. It's hundreds of dollars for like a little bottle of eye drops that I needed.
Okay, perfect example. Don't get me going on the drug companies, or we're going to be here for a very, very long time. But let me just say this. I want everybody to hear this. 3 months ago or so, I took a group of diabetics from the Midwest, the Detroit area, over the Canadian border, to buy insulin manufactured by the same exact company, same product, different bottle, same product. Who knows what the difference in price between insulin in Canada was as opposed to the United States? Anyone know the difference? It was 1/10 the price. And it's not just insulin. It is many, many drugs. 20 years ago, I took people from northern Vermont into Canada, to Montreal, to buy tamoxifen, which is a breast cancer drug, also paid 1/10 the price. So your point, here is the reality, but I want everybody to hear this. 1 out of 5 people in America under 65 who go to a doctor and get a prescription cannot afford to fill that prescription. How insane is that? How do you have a healthcare system when the doctor diagnoses you and gives you a prescription and you can't afford to fill that prescription? That's what you got now. But last year, the top 6 drug companies made $69 billion in profit. They pay their CEOs exorbitant compensation amounts. Then, without going into a great detail, because you know more about this, than any other state, we got the opioid epidemic. All right, and I want to say just one word about opioids. All of you are aware that attorneys general all over the country are right now engaged in a major lawsuit against Purdue and Johnson & Johnson and other opioid manufacturers. And the essence of the lawsuit, and this tells you how corrupt the pharmaceutical industry is. It's not just that they're greedy, they are incredibly greedy, they are corrupt. What the lawsuit speaks to is that these drug companies were knowingly, underline, knowingly selling a product, opioids, that were causing addiction and costing the lives of many, many thousands of Americans. And when they learned that the product was addictive, you know what they did? They hired more salesmen to push the product to a greater degree. Nothing different than a heroin pusher out on a street corner giving heroin to some kid. That is the pharmaceutical industry. They engage in price fixing. There is a reason why we pay 10 times more for some drugs than the Canadians and other countries. All right. I didn't want to get too far into that, but I wanted to just raise that issue about healthcare and where we have got to go. And my view is a very simple view. It is that healthcare is a human right, not a privilege. You're going to hear a lot of misinformation about Medicare for all. Because last year, the healthcare industry, the drug companies and the insurance companies made $100 billion in profit. And let me be frank with you, what this whole debate is about now, it's not anyone defending the dysfunctionality of the current healthcare system. This debate is about the healthcare industry wanting to keep their profits and wanting to keep the exorbitant compensation packages their CEOs get. And what I believe, and I've believed my entire adult life, I've been on this issue of Medicare for all for like 30 years, all right? And what I believe is the function of a rational healthcare system is to provide healthcare to all people as a human right, not a system designed to enrich the drug companies and the insurance companies and Wall Street. So very briefly, so you know what Medicare for all means. What it means is there are no more premiums. You got it? I consider a premium to be a tax to the insurance companies. So if you're paying $500 a month or $1,000 a month, it is gone. No more co-payments. So, whatever you have to pay, $50, $100 when you walk into the doctor's office, it is gone. No more, and we stop and you think about it, no more deductibles, which are so very crazy, all right? Right now, let's talk about deductibles. Tell me what deductibles you have here. What kind of deductibles? Yes, ma'am. 5,000, okay. 6,000. Anybody want to go higher than that? Yeah, ma'am. 8,000. 7,100. All right. So all that means is before you get to see a doctor, you got to take that money out of your own pocket. And if you're a working class person, well, you know what? You may not have that $7,000. And what happens? You don't go to the doctor, you get sicker than you should. We're going to eliminate that, and we're going to eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses. Is this a radical idea? I want you to think about it. Tell me the truth. Do you think this is a radical idea? No. It exists more or less in every other major country on earth. All right, we're a couple of 100 miles away from the Canadian border. Somebody ends up in a hospital in Canada with a severe illness. They're there for a month. What's the bill when they leave that hospital? It's zero. All right? So what we want to do is build on what the Canadians and other countries have done. That means you go to any doctor. There are a lot of lies about this. This is not a government takeover of the healthcare system. I'll get there. Not a takeover. It is you go to the same doctor you go now. You go to the same hospital. The only thing that has changed is the color of your insurance card. All right? It's called now Medicare for All rather than Blue Cross or United or whatever else it may be. Okay? What our legislation does is pretty simple. Right now, Medicare eligibility begins at the age of 65. In our first year, we do a couple of things. Most importantly, we lower the eligibility age from 65 down to 55. Because there are millions of people today. Not a very radical idea. You got tens of millions of people today who are 58, 60, 63, would give their right arms to be able to get into Medicare. Okay, second thing we do is recognize that Medicare is a good program and a strong program. We can improve it. And what we do is, in our Medicare for All approach, extend Medicare benefits to cover dental care. We heard about that a moment ago. To cover hearing aids, to cover eyeglasses. And you know what else, which is a big deal? What else we cover is home health care. All right? Because there are a lot of older people in this country who would much, much prefer to stay in their own homes in the last years of their life than be pushed into a nursing home. And we provide those services in the home. So, if we eliminate premiums and copayments and out-of-pocket expenses, how do we pay for it? We pay for it like every other major country. We do it out of the general tax base in a progressive way. And one of the cornerstones of what we are talking about, just to give you a very specific example, is to say, remember, we're eliminating all premiums, all out-of-pocket expenses. You're not paying a nickel in that. What you will pay is 4% on your income, exempting the first $29,000. So let's say you're the average family, you make $60,000 a year. You're paying 4% of $31,000, which is roughly $1,200 a year for comprehensive health care for every man, woman, and child in the household. That's a pretty good deal. All right? So you'll see 30-second ads here in New Hampshire. Bernie wants to raise your taxes. Yeah, but they'll forget to tell you I want to do away with your premiums, your co-payments, your out-of-pocket expenses, and the average American will save a very substantial amount of money. That average American making $60,000, that average American making $60,000 is now paying about $12,000 for health care. We're reducing that to $1,200. Pretty good deal, I think. Now, a lot of other issues that I want to talk about, and you have some questions I know you want to ask me. I want to just focus on one more issue. You all know that I disagree with Donald Trump on everything. But there is one area where his ignorance is not only impacting the United States, but the entire planet. And that is the issue of climate change. So let me tell you what gives me no pleasure to tell you, is what the scientists, look, I'm not here to tell you I'm a great scientist. I'm not. I failed physics in college, actually. So I'm not a great scientist, but I do listen to scientists. What they are now saying is they have underestimated the severity and the degree that climate change is already impacting the world and what it will mean in the future. In other words, the ice packs in the Arctic and in Greenland are melting at a much faster rate than they had anticipated, which means that the oceans are getting warmer. Oceans are going to rise, and unless we are very bold, you're going to see major cities, not only in America, but all over the world, low-level countries like Bangladesh, underwater by the end of the century or earlier than that. I don't have to tell anybody about the terrible situation in California, where wildfires have killed people, destroyed towns, where the electricity has been turned off for hundreds of thousands of people. It's all over the West Coast. Australia, right now, as we speak, is burning. Last summer, in Europe, they had the worst heat wave in their modern history. Thousands of people died as a result of that. Okay? We are talking, according to the United Nations, about tens of millions of people forced to migrate from their homes because they no longer will be able to get drinking water, clean drinking water, or be able to grow crops, feed their families. And when you have tens of millions of people migrating, you're talking about increased international conflict. That's what we're seeing. We have got to be courageous on this issue, because this is not just for us, it is for our children and our grandchildren and future generations. And what I am proud to tell you is that I have introduced the most comprehensive climate change legislation ever introduced by any federal candidate running for any office at all. All right? And it is based on the principles of the Green New Deal. And what that means is essentially the transformation of our energy system away from fossil fuel into energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And when we do that, we are going to create up to 20 million good-paying jobs, weatherizing our homes and our buildings, investing very heavily in wind and solar, with those products being manufactured here in the United States of America, transforming our energy system to give us an energy system based on electricity, not on fossil fuel and many, many other things. But what I would say to you, the more you read this stuff, the more scared you become. This is a huge issue. And to tell you the truth, it's not just an American issue. I wish I could tell you we could do it alone. We can't. So we're going to need leadership coming from the White House, which I hope to provide, telling China, telling Russia, telling India, telling Pakistan, telling countries all over the world, Latin America, Africa, we are in this together. We are fighting for the future of this entire planet. And this will be a major, major priority under our administration. Thank you. All right, there are a lot of other issues, but I don't want to keep you here all day. So why don't we got a couple of, how many mics do we got? You got one there, where's the other one? Good, all right, see guys, two guys, one mic each, all right. All right, any questions or comments? I see a gentleman back there in the black shirt, yeah.
Bernie, I love you.
I'm already married, I thank you.
Your platform is right on the money. What I'm concerned about is the 100 million eligible voters last time around who chose to sit out the election because they were so disillusioned by the entire process. How are you going to energize this cohort, many of whom think you're too old or too far to the left? I don't, but we got to get you in office.
I think I'm young. I'm going to age a few years. I'll be older and more mature. No, I don't think. Your point is, what's your name, by the way?
I'm Mike Bradley.
Mike, all right. Mike raises a good point. I don't think, how people feel about me is the reason why people are not voting. I'll tell you why people are not voting. People are not voting because they don't trust politicians. They don't believe in the process. They look around them and they see the very rich getting richer and they're working 2 or 3 jobs and their kids can't afford to go to school and they're paying half their income in rent. And they're saying, who's worrying about me? Who's worried about me? And young people are not voting because there's a culture out there that has not familiarized them and has not gotten them welcomed into the political process. In fact, you got a governor right here in this state who's going out of his way to make it harder for young people to vote. And you got voter suppression all over this country from cowardly governors who do not want people to vote because they're going to vote against the governors, all right? So what we are trying to do, and let me just say this, I think that is an enormously important question, because if we are going to defeat Donald Trump, and we must defeat Trump, we're going to need the largest voter turnout by far in the history of this country. And one of the reasons that I am running for president, and I say this not to disparage any other Democrat who is running. Many of them are my friends, and I like them. I think I am the strongest candidate to defeat Trump. And I think I'm the strongest candidate... to defeat Trump for a couple of reasons. If you look at the last time around, we won the primary in Michigan. We won it in Wisconsin. In fact, we won in 22 states. And we won with working class people. Because we talk to the issues of working class people. And secondly, I am very proud, don't talk about it enough, but I'm very proud that last time around, we ended up getting more votes from young people under 30 than Clinton and Trump combined. So let me tell you, we're spending a whole lot of energy and resources to reach out to those disenfranchised voters. That is exactly what we believe the key to our victory will be. And I will tell you this, on election night, you can turn off the TV very early. If there's a large voter turnout, turn it off, we won. If there is a low voter turnout, we lose. That's it. And by the way, while I'm here, I need your help. We need your help here in New Hampshire. All right, we are planning in the next couple of months, well, that's all there is a couple of months, to leaflet or do leaflets going to every door in the door hangers and stuff. We need people's help. Can people here give us a couple hours on a Saturday morning? All right, all it is, just put the damn door hanger up there. All right, we're going to have some staff. Where's our staff? Raise your hand, staff. All right, those guys over there, please come up to them with your names, and we'll get back to you. But we need people to help us do some door knocking. Yes, ma'am. Give us your name, please.
Hi, my name is Dima Omran. I'm a new citizen. I just became a citizen last year.
Thank you.
I don't know if this might sound cheesy, but seeing you like in person was on my bucket list. So I'm very happy.
You got a long way to go. You'll have better things in your life.
Thank you. I just want to say something because I lived in like 5 countries. I lived in Jordan and Lebanon and Egypt. I'm originally Palestinian. And I was able to see what dictatorship looks like. And obviously now seeing Trump, how he rises, it's definitely the beginning of dictatorship. And that's why I'm here. We left our families to be in a better place, and hopefully we will help make it better. My question to you is, I know everyone talks about Trump being the force we want to get rid of. But the other thing I feel is the media, because I look at the media, and as much as it feels like freedom of speech and democracy, but they kind of play like they decide who to shove down our throats, whether it was, no offense, Hillary Clinton a few years ago, whether it was now maybe Elizabeth Warren, and then they're going to move to Pete, then they decide. And like to me, you represent integrity and ethics and everything good in the world. Yeah, and I just want to say, like I left my 5 children at home in Massachusetts because I just want to come here and say how I want to be involved in every possible way. But we need you to tell us, how aggressive are you going to be with the media? Because sometimes when they go low, we cannot go high.
Okay. Let me thank you very much. And by the way, what a wonderful citizen you are. Thank you for being in our country. Let me just say a few things about media. Donald Trump thinks the media is the enemy of the people. He thinks everything is fake news, and that is exactly what demagogues do. All right, what they try to say, don't believe anything that you see on television or in the newspapers. It's all a lie. I'm perfect, and they're all lying and picking on me. All right, that is a terrible thing to do for any president. I don't believe that. But what I believe, I think, is common sense. You have corporate media owned by large corporations. All right, that's not too hard. And many of the reporters work hard, and every now and then, great articles. We use on our social media articles from the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal. Very perceptive, good investigative journalism. But at the end of the day, I think it is fair to say, and I say this to you in 2016, picking up on your point, I don't know how many hundreds of daily newspapers there are in America. I received the endorsement of one of them. One. That was the Seattle Times. All right. I am not the candidate of corporate America, and I'm not the candidate of the corporate media. I think that's fairly obvious, and that will manifest itself in many ways. But one of the points that I would make, my main criticism of the corporate media is not even, their hostility to me. That's not the issue. The issue is what the issues are that they choose to focus on and what they choose not to focus on. All right? And I think it is fair to say that over the years, media does not focus on the issues and the pain facing working people in this country, does not focus on, not to say that they don't mention it, but they don't focus on the massive level of income and wealth inequality. They don't focus on the structural imbalance of power in America. That they will not do, because they are the establishment, and they're not going to be busy attacking itself. So within that context, we do the best that we can. But I think more and more people understand that, you know, this is, I'm not the candidate of the corporate media. Yeah, woman right here. Yes, ma'am. Right here, yes.
Yes, thank you. Bernie, I love you too. I am a new grandmother.
Congratulations.
And my daughter and her husband are kind of struggling financially, and it's made me think about something important. I got to ask you, what are your plans to invest in high-quality early childhood education to ensure that every child has an equal access to a strong start in life?
Thank you. What's your name?
Barbara. Barb Southern.
Barbara. Barb, thanks for asking that question, and I should have touched on it. Getting back to what Mandela said, everything seems impossible until it is done. I want you all to think about this. Barb raises this issue. What do the psychologists tell us about 0 through 4? They tell us that those are the most important years of intellectual and emotional development for a human being. We all know that. 0 to 4. And yet, in New Hampshire, in Vermont, and all over this country, it is almost impossible for working class people to find high quality, affordable childcare. And the childcare workers are often underpaid and often don't even have health care benefits. All right? We're going to change that. All right? When I talk about education, it's not just making public colleges and universities tuition free. It's not just putting money into Title I public schools, etc. It is also developing a universal, high-quality, affordable child care system in America. Every family in this country, regardless of your income, should be able to send your kid to a high-quality pre-K facility. And we are going to bring that about. That is a terribly high, important issue for me. Okay, I see a woman here, right here, in the very colorful hat. Okay.
Hi.
All right, we're going to get going fairly soon here, so I'm going to, yeah.
First, I want to say, as a college student.
Hold that mic close to your mouth.
In UVM, by the way.
Okay.
I think it's easy to get discouraged about, you know, my future and our collective future. So I feel like I want to thank you for giving me and my generation a lot of hope. You know, it feels like there hasn't been much, you know, hope for the possibility of change in a while. So thank you. My question is, how are we going to make the structural change necessary to combat the systemic racism and discrimination in our electoral system, and make the change necessary to value all American votes equally and not just the votes of white people, whether that be in the order of the primary states. I mean, look at the demographic of New Hampshire, right? And in voter suppression that is targeting people of color, people in poverty, people with disabilities unequally, and, you know, the gerrymandering that we're allowing in the Electoral College. Like, how are we going to make the change?
Great question.
Thank you.
All right. Are you from Vermont?
I'm from New Hampshire.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that question. Look, Donald Trump is doing something extraordinarily ugly, among many other things. And what he is doing, which is kind of unprecedented, is he is very intentionally trying to divide the American people up based on the color of our skin, based on where we were born, his xenophobia, based on our religion, the anti-Muslim and anti-other religious groups, based on our sexual orientation. And he thinks if he can divide us up based on hatred and divisiveness, he's going to win this election. Our view is exactly the opposite. And what our campaign is about and what our administration is about is bringing people together, black and white and Latino Native American, Asian American. You are quite right. Racism in this country is systemic. It exists in all areas of our life. It certainly exists in the election system, where there is an intentional effort. And there would be a different governor of Georgia today, Stacey Abrams, if there was not voter suppression there in a very intentional way. It exists in the healthcare field, where there are not enough black doctors or nurses or social workers. It exists in distribution of wealth, where the average white family now has 10 times more wealth than the average black family. So we will focus very strongly on creating an America that is non-discriminatory in all of its areas, and pay a special attention to those distressed communities, often black and Latino, who have not gotten a fair shake for the American dream. All right, that is a very high part of our agenda. All right, we've got to run now. We've got a meeting that I got to go to. Let me just say this. I don't have to tell anybody in this room how important New Hampshire is to the political process in this country. We need your help. We have an absolutely very strong chance to win here. We will win here if we have the volunteer support that we need. So you're going to get a call from us. You'll get an email from us. We need you to help us hand out literature and talk to your neighbors. Really would appreciate your support. Let's go forward. Let's win New Hampshire. Let's win the Democratic nomination. Let's defeat Donald Trump. Let's change America. Thank you.